IELTS Writing Task 2, Lesson 5, Planning. I've talked about planning before in these lessons. In the lesson about introductions, you saw how I planned an introduction, and in the lesson about main body paragraphs, you saw how I recommend planning main body paragraphs. This lesson is just going to focus only on that planning stage, so you see in a bit more detail exactly how I recommend spending your planning time. As I've said before, I recommend spending 10 minutes planning your Task 2 essay. And that seems like a long time to most people, but if you've got a good plan, it will be much easier to write an excellent essay. And you can definitely do that in only 30 minutes if you have a good plan. So let's look at that planning stage. I'll give you some examples of how I go about noting down good ideas for your essay.
Here's how I do a 3-step essay plan in 10 minutes. First, we need a question to work on. Let's use a question that is a very easy one that I think demonstrates very well the planning stage, and I also used this question in my lesson about introductions. Some people think that it is more effective for students to study in groups, while others believe that it is better for them to study alone. Discuss both views and give your own opinion. Step 1 in planning any essay is to read and understand the question. And to help you with that, highlight or underline key parts in the question. I'm going to highlight a few key things. Firstly, discuss both views. This essay question requires us to discuss two sides of an issue. So what are those two sides? The first view is it's more effective to study in groups, and the opposite view, it's more effective to study alone. As well as discussing those two viewpoints, we also have to give our own opinion for this question. That's step 1. We've read and understood the question. Step 2 is plan your essay structure and always think about 4 paragraphs. Here's what my 4-paragraph plan always looks like. Always have an introduction that's going to have 2 sentences. I'm going to introduce the topic and give a short general answer. And at the end, I'm always going to repeat that answer in my conclusion. Then, as you can see in the middle, we just need to decide what the main body paragraphs are going to be about. Let's start though with the introduction and plan that in a little bit more detail. What is the topic and what is the answer that we're going to give? The topic is study in groups or studying alone. That's what we have to discuss. And the answer that I'm going to choose for this particular essay is sometimes it's better to study alone, but usually it's better in a group. That's my opinion. Looking at the conclusion, we just need to repeat that answer. How can we say that in a different way? Well, maybe we'll put something like both have benefits, but I prefer group study. Now the most important part, we need to think about the main body paragraphs and what do we put in each of those. Well, with 2 viewpoints, we obviously need a paragraph for each view. That's the easiest way to do it. For paragraph 2, I'm going to talk about the benefits of studying alone. And then in paragraph 3, I'll move on to the benefits of group study, which is my view, or the view that I agree with most as well. I've therefore discussed both sides. My view is clear in there. It will be in the introduction, it will be mentioned in paragraph 3 and repeated in the conclusion. That was step 2 in the planning process, and that should have taken about 3 or 4 minutes in total, steps 1 and 2 up to here. Usually my students can manage this in about 3 or 4 minutes, which gives us 6 minutes left of the planning time, and that final 6 minutes is going to be for the most important part. We're ready now for step 3 in planning, which is plan ideas for the 2 main paragraphs, and as I said, we've got about 6 minutes left for this, hopefully. Let's move on and try and do that then. We'll plan ideas, the benefits of studying alone and the benefits of group study. First, here's my advice about planning ideas for main paragraphs. The first piece of advice that I give to students is brainstorm. Note down any ideas you have. When you're brainstorming, you don't need to organize the ideas and you don't need to write full sentences. Don't worry also if later you think one of your ideas is a bad one. At the brainstorming stage, you just note down anything that you can think of that's relevant. Second tip, develop ideas in detail. Instead of just having a list of many different points, if you've got either 1, 2 or 3 ideas developed in more detail, that's likely to lead to a better paragraph. So how do you develop your ideas in detail? The simplest way is to keep asking yourself why. If you have an idea, a reason for something, an explanation for your opinion, for example, keep asking yourself, why do I think this? Why am I saying this? And that encourages you to go into more detail. The next piece of advice is to think of examples to support your ideas. And finally, try to group related ideas together by numbering them. As I said at the beginning, when you're brainstorming, you don't need to worry about organization. But when all your ideas are down on paper, finally then look at them and try and group them together and put numbers next to them. And those numbers can represent the sentences that you're going to write in your paragraph. I'll show you how I would do that in a moment. Let's go back to our question and I'll show you how I go through these different steps and plan some good ideas. Remember, we've got 2 main body paragraphs and our first one is going to be about the benefits of studying alone. We're going to try to spend 3 minutes planning and noting down ideas for this. So I brainstormed this question with some of my students for 3 minutes, and here's some of the ideas that we had. First we said you can concentrate better if you're studying alone. Why? Remember, keep asking yourself why. You've got no distractions. You can concentrate better because you've got no distractions, and therefore you can focus on the task. So we've developed the idea of concentrate better with a little bit more detail. Next point, read books or articles. Well, this was an example that someone gave of concentrating. If you're on your own, studying alone, it's easier to read compared to if you're in a group. And the next point we had, study at own pace, so you can go quickly or slowly. That's not really related to the ideas before it, so we might have to reorganize this later. Our next idea was an example. When revising for an exam, you might want to concentrate and focus, read. Next idea, memorize information. We thought when you're in an exam, you might want to memorize things, and studying alone would be better. As you can see, there's some good ideas there, but it's not really in order at the moment. We'll need to think about numbering these ideas, grouping them and organizing them. But we'll do that in a moment after our brainstorm for the next paragraph. Paragraph 3 will be about the benefits of group study. And again, 3 minutes planning, brainstorming for this part. Let's look at what my students and I thought for this one. More ideas. If you're studying in a group, you can have more ideas. Why? Keep asking yourself why. You can share knowledge between the people in the group. Any other reasons? You can gather more information. More people can look up more information, do more research. Our next idea related to that, for example, doing a research project, you might need to gather a lot more information. Next point, you can learn from each other. Next point, this might be more motivating, working together with other people. Why? Let's explain why it might be more motivating. You have some responsibility to the group, so you want to work well for the other people, or because there's a sense of competition in the group, maybe. Those were the ideas we had in 3 minutes, Now we've got ideas planned for both main body paragraphs, but as I said, there's one final stage in this planning of ideas, and that is to organise the ideas a bit better. I'm going to now number some of these ideas in each paragraph so that you can see how I would organise them when I'm actually writing the paragraph. Back to the benefits of studying alone then, well, that will be sentence number 1, a topic sentence about something like there are several benefits of studying alone, or maybe there are 2 main benefits of studying alone if we decide that there are only 2 in our ideas. Sentence 2 will start with this idea about concentration, and I think no distractions and focus on the task is the same point. So that's point number 2. Number 3, reading books or articles could be an example. Actually, that's probably an example of a time when you need to concentrate more without distractions. And another number 3, when revising for an exam, we could group those 2 points together because they're both really examples of times when you need to concentrate more. Leading on from the exam one, we thought then memorizing information could follow on from that as an extra point to explain why it's good to work alone when revising. And finally, as I said earlier, this study at your own pace, I've put that as number 5. I think that's a separate point. When writing that paragraph then, I'd go through those numbers in order and try to write a sentence for each one. It doesn't always work out perfectly like that, but at least now we've got some good ideas and they're in some kind of organised order. Let's do the same for the benefits of group study, and that will be number 1, our topic sentence, and we'll then go on to our first point, which is in a group you have more ideas, you share knowledge, gather more information. I think that could all go together as one point. And learn from each other, I thought that's probably the same thing. More ideas, sharing, gathering, learning from each other could maybe all go together. You might get 2 sentences out of that because there's a lot of ideas supporting the same point. Then we could move on to number 3. Our example about a research project would be perfect for this kind of work. And then number 4 is this motivation side. I think the rest of the points are all to do with that, all related to motivation, the responsibility to the group, and the sense of competition. Maybe you'd get 2 sentences out of that point instead of just 1 as well. Again, I've put my points in order now. I'm in a much better position to write them as a full paragraph, sentence by sentence. And that would be the end of my essay plan for this question. I've spent up to 4 minutes on the reading, understanding, and looking at the structure, and then I've spent around 6 minutes on these main body paragraphs. And notice that I prepared ideas for each one separately. If you try to think of both main paragraphs at the same time, it just becomes confusing. So separate your planning time into 3 minutes for each one. Let's just finish by summarising what we did, what those 3 steps were. So the 10-minute essay plan had 3 steps. The first step was read and understand the question. And then the second step was to plan your essay structure. And then finally, third step, you plan ideas for the 2 main paragraphs. Try doing this yourself with an essay question, and remember, don't expect to be good at this straight away. It does take practice. It might seem easy to plan in the way that I've done, but you don't become good at this with only 1 or 2 attempts. You need to practice a lot. If you do lots of essays and plan them in this way, you will get better. So practice as much as possible before your test. We've now covered the main techniques for writing task 2, planning, introductions, main body paragraphs, conclusions, and in the next lesson, lesson 6, we'll put all of that advice together into a full essay. We're going to start with an opinion question, which will ask us whether we agree or disagree. This is a very common type of question for writing task 2, so I'm going to use all of the advice that I've given you over the last 6 lessons to write a Band 9 essay for this type of question.